Now, I've presented here and elsewhere, and there have been some other videos made to talk in greater detail here, but essentially to encapsulate this idea, it's just changing the idea of acceptable risk as it applies from the individual, where we think about when we go into the backcountry or we're climbing or skiing, we will internally come up with these ideas of acceptable risk, like how am I gauging my own personal risk? What's my level of acceptable risk in the mountains? And changing that mindset of individual level of acceptable risk to that level of acceptable risk as assumed by the community. And I argue and I maintain that the consequences are assumed by us completely as a community. And as we're seeing alarming numbers of trends of increased close calls and accidents between parties and infrastructure, and between parties on the road. And I reach out to people aspirationally to say, hey, this is how this defines us as a mountain community. But frankly, the dirty underbelly here, my feeling is if we as a community, as communities, don't take care of this ourselves, then there will be others that come in and do it for us with these ideas of permanent closures of terrain, perhaps a backcountry permit system, or above all, on an individual basis, this idea of negligent homicide. So again, I've spoken at length in other venues and in other ways. And I would like to present a film here that, once again, our creative genius, Trent Meisenheimer, amazing. He has been able to actualize this ethic in just a 3.5 minute PSA, which he'll play for you now. We're at crossroads in the state of the backcountry right now. Backcountry use has exploded. Side country use has exploded. We're seeing increased numbers of close calls and accidents in the backcountry between parties on the road, between parties and infrastructure. This is unsustainable. I know we go into the backcountry because our love of the powder and freedom in the mountains, but it's got to be tempered with responsibility to make the right decisions at the right time. Remember, our decisions we make define us as an individual and reflect back on the community as a whole. We have to travel with mindfulness in the mountains. The 3 key points are knowledge, awareness, and wisdom.
I'm Angel Collinson, and the first one is knowledge. You know what the Abbey traditions are. If you don't, you can always find out at avalanche.org. Also, can you pull off your own rescue? This is key.
Hey, I'm Brody Levin, and the second one is awareness. Are you aware of road or ski area avalanche control plans and closures? Are you aware of parties above or below you? We have tons of avalanche paths throughout the West that thread roads, and there's thousands of cars west on them. In some places, buildings below. Really, you can't have people riding in terrain we have targeted for explosives and artillery work. An accident here has consequences that affect every avalanche safety program in North America. So please remember, we need your help, and we're all in this together.
The third precept is wisdom. Are you putting others at risk without their consent? This includes roads, infrastructure, and other parties below.
A few incidents and accidents could quickly unravel into access and liability issues. Let's work together. Let's travel with mindfulness in the mountains to avoid potential consequences of permanent closures, backcountry permit systems, and personal liability.
So whether you're out in the big mountains, deep in the backcountry, or getting the goods just out of bounds, it's super important to remember the three key factors: knowledge, awareness, and wisdom, that are going to preserve what we love, which is our freedom in the backcountry. Because when I'm dropping into a big line or cutting a cornice onto it, I'm always making sure there's no people below me, there's no roads below me, and there's no infrastructure that I'm going to hit with an avalanche. Because, you know, at the end of the day, what we want most is just riding off into the sunset and high-fiving our buddies.
Good job. Well, as we're loading this, I'll introduce myself. I'm Steve Scheid. I was, up until a few months ago, the winter sports specialist in the Salt Lake Ranger District. Spent about the last 20 years there. Recently moved to the Intermountain region where I look at some of the bigger questions. And I'm not going to talk so much on the social aspect of this, but maybe help establish some boundaries and some guidelines so folks understand what are the rules and where we don't have rules and kind of what those mean. Maybe help frame this discussion, recognizing that backcountry skiing occurs from ski resorts, outside ski resorts, and that interface that works between them. So we get a question a lot about what is the policy, and I'm going to talk about two different kinds of what we call boundary management. Boundary management has had a root in a long time. It's occurred, but the kind of uses that most folks are familiar with are one where folks ride a lift and exit the resort and ski out of bounds on national forest lands or other lands. And the other issue I'm going to touch on is an issue that seems to be growing, is called uphill access, or skiing at a ski resort primarily before they open or after they open, and what are the rules and policies that govern those use. And some of them are pretty vague, you'll see as I go through this. The agency, there is no formal national policy on ski area boundary management leaving ski resorts. A lot of the rules and the management came out of the late 80s. A lot of my predecessors worked with the ski industry, recognizing folks were leaving the ski resort. There's a lot of hazards for the ski area, for the public, that have been discussed here. So how do we come up with a plan to make that more acceptable and to get it more consistent? So if you go to one ski resort, one region, you're going to find some consistency on how those are implemented. So really, there are some regional supplements, but really, again, no national policy as far as skier access backcountry. A boundary management plan, although there's no policy, all the ski areas operate under a 40-year permit. Those are ski resorts on national forests. These issues affect private ski areas also, and they've adopted a lot of this with the ski industry. A requirement of the permit is that each ski resort have a boundary management plan as part of their permit. It's part of their annual operating plan. It's reviewed annually. Generally, those plans are maps. Part of our initial policy here in the Intermountain region talked about Forest Service encouraging ski resorts to provide skiers the opportunity to leave the resorts. And as part of that, they also talked about managing that use. Let's identify those areas. Early language talked about access gates. And prior to this policy, that's how a lot of the land was managed. There were closures, there was gates. Those are liabilities for the ski industry, and they recognize this. This new policy, moved toward an access point, an area that was open on the boundary. Let's funnel people out where it's safe for them, where it's safe for the ski area, where they're not going to come back in on your public, your infrastructure. So that was the next focus. Let's call access points where people could access the public lands beyond. As this use has grown and continued, the industry and the agency and all parties involved have taken a hard look at this. And part of it is the terminology, just being really clear that we really define what the use is, what is their goal, what are they seeking. And now we've all resigned on a ski area exit point. Folks are wanting to exit the ski resort. So we have policy in place that allows people to exit. We want them to exit the right place. We want to prepare signs. We want to allow them to do it in the most safe way possible. We don't want folks cutting ropes or going in places that are going to create some challenges. You've probably seen some of these signs around. I saw one earlier in one of the presentations, the top sign, This is consistent what you'll find in the Intermountain region, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, and Nevada. And it's basically lets folks know they're leaving an area that's controlled or patrolled to have the right knowledge and the right equipment and be prepared for your own rescue. If you go into Rocky Mountain region, Colorado, this policy, they have a supplemental policy that was defined by lawyers. It went to court. There was a fatality at A Basin a number of years back. Their sign has a lot more words. So the other thing that comes with that policy that was developed in the late 80s, we get a lot of questions about, is early season use. And we know up at Alta a couple years back, we had a real challenging weekend, very much in line with what this discussion's about responsible use. Well, there is a policy. Ski resorts basically are backcountry areas until they open. We do have policy that allows them to shut the mountain down a week before their opening for avalanche stuff. So you'll see these signs at the ski resorts, letting folks know that it's open, there's risks, it's backcountry, or that it's closed for ski area prep. The other issue that I want to chat about is this growing use of uphill travel, use at ski resorts outside of the ski area hours, and in some cases during the ski area hour. It's become really popular. What we've seen in the Wasatch the last couple of years with limited early season snowfall, that our high north areas, the best skiing is often at our ski resorts, and folks want to get out there. The agency recognized that, and as part of some additional national policy, we created some uphill policy. And there's a number of points that I think are really important about what rights the ski resort have versus what right do the user public have. And so what we tried to do is clarify that in some policy, and recognizing that a ski area operates under a non-exclusive use permit, which means they don't have the legal right to shut down their borders, their boundaries to all uses. That is, the understanding is that's a negotiated use. But we also recognize that they've got a large investment. They've got that they provide not just facilities, but they provide services. And so what's a realistic return on that investment? Is a groomed trail, is that open to the public, and does that belong to the ski resort? So we have policy that now defines, their services as what they produce. So a ski resort has the right now to protect that investment. They put a lot of money into snowmaking, into grooming, and they have the ability with consultation with the Forest Service to create a plan that closes those areas where they can charge for it. Those aren't free services. I mean, if the backcountry areas within a ski resort, the undeveloped, if they haven't put in investment, they can't charge for that. So that's one point. And basically what we're saying is, as a non-exclusive use permit, the resort just can't basically charge an entry fee. So if you want to go visit there, they can charge for what they've developed, but if you during off hours want to go to a place that's not developed, barring some of the safety discussions that I'll touch on, those things are still open, and it's not an entry fee. Basically, the last part of this is, that to the extent possible, based on these safety considerations, some portions of the permit area are to remain open to the public without charge. So it's in our policy, it's a clear expectation with the ski resort is that they have to, as a permittee on public land, provide some level of reasonable public access. And so the question is, what does that mean? What is reasonable public access? So again, a little more detail. I don't want to get into all the language. You can read along with that. But basically, what we're saying is that the ski resort needs to allow lawful uses. And that's a kind of a tough thing. But it also says in the other part of this that are not inconsistent with the holder's rights and privileges. So we're looking at a balancing act. What does that mean? The ski resorts, as most folks in here know, are 24/7-hour operations every day of the winter. They're doing stuff from the minute they close to the minute they open. There's cats on the ground, there's snowmaking, there's snow farming, there's winches. So at some level, the resorts, understandably, are very concerned. Liability-wise, they don't have control of people and where they are and when they are. It's a very difficult and challenging situation for the employees. And so the other part of that is balancing the need really to find the right level of use. And so we're talking about different things: temporal, spatial, time and place. You know, they're very similar to what UDOT has done in Little Cottonwood with closures for avalanching. You know, there's times when uphill travel in much of the resorts is probably safe and feasible. There's times when it's not. There's been experiences where ski patrollers have pulled spitters, they've been on a control route, and somebody's skinning below them. And that's not acceptable. The ski resort needs the means to be able to do that. So basically, we're working with the resorts. So here's this balancing aspect about balancing public safety and reasonable access. And the other part of it is the legal aspect. The Forest Service doesn't put into effect ordinances to stop that kind of use at the ski resort. There are other ordinances, the town of Alta, Marshall, Salt Lake County. A lot of places there's ordinances in place that some of these violations can be cited. You could be arrested theoretically if there's a plan in place. To me, maybe the critical part is the opportunities that this provides. Each of the ski resorts on the Uinta Wasatch Cache National Forest have draft plans. Part of the new language in here is each resort must create a plan as part of their annual operating plan. It's reviewed and signed annually. And part of that is it's going to be a work in progress. Last year, the UAC posted some of those plans on their website. We got a lot of feedback. We're still working on that. And our goal is to develop a process similar to what UDOT did with the Little Cottonwood military weapons closure, and invite the public, the ski resorts, to sit down to develop a plan that makes sense for folks. And also to develop a plan that's going to be adaptive, that over time we can learn from it. You know, have that dialogue where people understand what the needs and the goals are of the users, as well as what the implications are to the ski resorts. There's real safety issues to their personnel and to the public. So what we're hoping through this is to develop a process, and I encourage you to be patient. They're going to work on that, and then how do we communicate that? The key to any good process is that open communication, so that folks can have real expectations, so you can understand when and where it's appropriate, so you're not putting other people at hazard, whether it's a cat driver or somebody who's going to come out and do a rescue. So all those pieces are really critical to this uphill policy, and we encourage you to work with the resorts and the UAC and the Forest Service. And again, be patient. These are going to take some time, but I think what it's going to, in the long run, the goal is to develop a well thought out system that provides that reasonable balance about access, as well as the safety for all the different users.
How's the sound? Everyone hear me? My name's Laurie Delaney. I am an avalanche forecaster with UDOT up in Little Cottonwood Canyon. What I wanted to touch on today with this presentation was an issue of concern that we've had as avalanche mitigation technicians attempting to do avalanche mitigation work in backcountry terrain. And that trend of concern is the increasing number of individuals that we've encountered just prior to avalanche mitigation work who are attempting to enter the backcountry after it has been closed. And those individuals seemed either unaware of the closure or unaware of the dangers or unconcerned with the dangers of entering the backcountry when artillery or Gaz-X or hand charge route explosives work was about to be conducted. So there seems to be a disconnect there, some sort of informational gap, and part of my goal today is to hopefully give more air to some of the tools that we try to use to make sure that people are informed about what we are doing, what our time frames are, what our goals are. Certainly we don't want anyone to suffer or any sort of catastrophic incident. That's not obviously good for the individual. It's not good for any program. So if I can get this to work.
Right. Point it up there.
Press it.
You have to load it. There we go.
It probably went through all of my slides at this point. So to that end, there are a number of online communication tools that we utilize. Obviously, the UAC site is a great one. Our closures get posted on that website, and there's a myriad of other valuable information there. But something that we have developed within UDOT is the UDOT Avalanche Safety website, and you can Google UDOT Avalanche Safety and be taken to that website. There's sort of a baseline message there which indicates no avalanche control work being conducted. And then further down on that site, we have information about how to use probably the most valuable tool that we've recently started utilizing, and that's Twitter. So you can go to the website, check out the instructions if you haven't already, and you can follow us at UDOT-AVI. And it's probably the most easy, passive way to make sure that you get information about what we're doing. Okay, thanks. So if you do follow us, then you can actually set it up so that that Twitter account will text you when we have closures, and it gives you a very basic message. It's succinct. It basically gives you time frames, locations, and then if you need further information, there's an example there, as you can see, quite succinct. So then if you need further information, you can refer back to that UDOT Avalanche Safety website, and at that point, we will have loaded more information, hopefully faster than I'm managing to make this work. And on that website, we will post areas, time frames, locations, give you an idea of what you need to expect, and even further, and we're working on making this more interactive and more accurate, but we will have a map which you can look at to determine where those closures are, Little Cottonwood, Big Cottonwood, Provo Canyon, and then where the backcountry closures are that we'll be implementing, excuse me. So, really valuable tool. If you don't have that Twitter account and you travel in those road systems at all, it would be well worth your time to engage in that, and we actually would ask that you would, just as a level of responsibility to those of you who are backcountry users on those roadways. So with those tools, we also have several physical tools that you'll see if you're traveling on the roadways, which we try to put out to give you information about backcountry access restrictions. We also program those with avalanche control work information. Furthermore, we have several large signs at our popular trailheads. When those lights are flashing, that indicates control work in the backcountry and that you are not advised to go there. We've closed the backcountry there. So with those tools, what we would ask from everybody as backcountry users within those roadway systems is to take on the responsibility of being informed about what's going on with the road as even part of your pre-trip planning, especially early in the morning. Make that part of your evaluation of where to go, when to go, why you're going there. Beyond just snowpack evaluation, we would ask that you would accept that responsibility, be informed of what's going on the road, and communicate that to others. You may have that information already, but there's more and more people entering into this backcountry sport, so please inform them as well. That is our request, that we can all work together and keep things the way they are without any sort of incident.
My name's John Schofield. Does this work? No? There we go. I was contacted by Paul Deigel and Craig Gordon, and they said there's this group of people in the Wasatch that are becoming more and more popular, bigger groups, and causing some problems. And we think you're part of that group. Can you provide some perspective to us? And then Craig said, do you have anything you can show us? And I said, well, I don't know. There's maybe some old YouTube videos or some. So just as an introduction, Brett, can you key up that one little short trailer?
Monitor down here also. Can you use the handheld, please? The handheld. Yeah, he tried. Just use it. Let me see it for a second. Make sure it's on. Okay, yeah. Just use this. It'll just take us a second to bring it up.
Okay. It's no brain farm production by any means, but you know, that's what a board attorney does with a GoPro camera and iMac 4 or 5 years ago. This concept of the Dawn Patrol, I started skiing in the backcountry in the mid-'80s and didn't see very much of it, probably because back then I was sleeping in till noon and would go out in the afternoon. But since having a profession and a family, the only time I really have to go get some turns in is between, you know, 6 and 8 in the morning. And nowadays, you go up to any park and ride at 5 o'clock, 5:30. There are dozens and dozens of people meeting there. They're going to the trailheads. They're out there, and they're often causing problems. I've heard people from UDOT say, we were going to shoot this bridge line up here, and there's 4 helmets or headlamps skinning up the trail. What can we do about this? And I think things have really improved recently with just getting information out to know what areas are closing, where to go. They're going to be bombing in this area. You've got to ski a different canyon, or whatnot. But it's critical to have the communication between knowing where you're going to go, knowing what's going to happen, and being respectful of that. And you know, people have said, well, can't these guys just go another time? Can't they wait? It's happening, and people are out there, and there are more and more people that are going. It's hard. I mean, you'll see, you know, last year, Good Powder Day, I remember seeing 20 people on the Peak of Superior at sunrise, and people are going, they're out there. So I would like to know from perspectives over here, I mean, what can we do to stay off? How can we, you know, better help you guys out? Would be interesting to know. And I think we need to be sensitive to the information we're getting as well.
I mean, I think you're very much in the group of people that we're really happy to communicate with, because you're very receptive. And from our perspective, I think that, as I said, trying to be aware of those closures and be on top of that, along with the forecast, but also trying to communicate that with other individuals who might be entering into the sport and who might be very gung-ho. And if we're not doing control work, it's not an issue with us. We understand that people only have a limited amount of time to go out and get those powder turns in, and that's great. And when we are doing control work, typically somebody like you isn't the one that's out there. It's newer people who maybe haven't been given that information. So if you are able to disseminate that to a peer group that is newer to the sport, and I think that's our biggest request to individuals like you who do have more experience and maybe do have some sort of mentorship or sway with individuals who are newer to the sport, and maybe instill that level of respect and responsibility in them.
Hi, I'm Jay Pistono, and I just got told we're out of time. So.
You got time.
Anyway,
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
For me, when snow is like this, this is how I feel like people are. You really, when the snow is good, you let your guard down, and I think almost anybody in here, if it's this good, you're going to maybe do something a little bit stupid once in a while. So if you have good skiing, you know, we have good access in our places, you're going to get people that are going to do a little bit of dangerous things just because it's so much fun, right? I'll go through these really quick. I just want to talk to you about numbers on Teton Pass. We have a small parking lot of 50 spaces, and that parking lot cycles through 3 times a day. So by the end of the season on Teton Pass, we're talking about 80 to 100,000 backcountry runs in a year, and a lot of that's in avalanche terrain. Now, when the snow is good, a lot of those are lucky runs. People are doing it. This is a slide, debris pile from Glory Bowl, and they have no idea they're getting lucky. With the numbers thing that we have to keep letting people know statistically that there's potentially dangerous situations that they're going into. I'm going to go as fast as I can here, and so in that. To get that message out, like I say, I would encourage you to talk to other people as many times as you're out there. If you see somebody that's doing something obviously dangerous, I don't think it's that hard to, like, in a friendly way, let them know what's going on. I'll move through the rest of this really quick. My job up on the pass is we have to work together with YDOT, the Highway Patrol, and the Search and Rescue to make it happen up there. Bottom line for us, I'm a Forest Service employee, and what we really want to have is the access open. That's the bottom line. We're not going to have access in a lot of our areas if we're not somewhat responsible. And I would stretch that out to say not just with yourself, but encourage yourself and your friends to talk to other people. And we're going to leave you guys some time for questioning here, so hopefully we'll get a bunch of snow like we had in that first image coming up. I saw us with the gray circles earlier. I got kind of worried. You guys have the black dots. So, question time, Craig?
Yeah. Let's open it up to questions. I mean, we've got a great panel here, so as a community, what can we do to balance this out so that we're not policed by the outside, so that we can kind of keep this an in-house thing? You want to be policed by the outside? So tell us this then, Jake. In your experience, you're seeing all of these changes. What's the best approach then to get the information out to the public? Is it you personally? Is it FaceTime? Do people read signs?
They really do. I like back to the thing I said before about the human touch. You need to be able to talk to people, and like I say, do it in as friendly a manner as you can. It's like the signs are really not that effective. I would put them low on the list, and I'll throw a little wrench. I'll have you edit your thing. I really don't think that avalanche information is just a click away either. I think the information you get on your phone, it's good. It's a starting point. You got to stick a shovel in the snow. You can't just look at what's on a report. And as far as information goes, what I encourage people to do when they're out there, your boots on the ground. You can't be making a decision based off of what you got on your phone. You need to do a little bit more work and find out about what's going on. I mean, if we took a snowfield the size of this room, everybody in here could dig a pit and get slightly different results. You really need to dig right where you're at to determine, make that decision. So I would just throw a question out. How many people here know someone who's been in an avalanche or died in an avalanche? Okay, that's like most of the room. Okay, how many people here have been directly involved in like an avalanche incident that caused a fatality? You were there when somebody died. Okay, so you got about 10 hands or so. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the bottom line, is we want to go out and have fun and do, you know, ride this good snow and come back alive. You know, it's a crusher. It takes the wind out of our sails when somebody dies. So I know for me, that's, you know, I tend to remember it a bunch. So.
Question?
You're obviously part of this Teton Pass Ambassador program, which I live down here, so I'm familiar with. Is that something that the Cottonwoods could benefit from?
Yeah.
Developing an ambassador program? Oh, hi.
Yeah, if you, just a quick repeat of the question, please.
Yeah, I just had to get it from the voice so it makes sense. I live down here in Utah. I actually live up in Heber City, so we don't even ski the Cottonwoods. We ski the Park City Ridgeline a lot. But at any rate, seeing all the lots of people skiing the Cottonwoods, my question was, could a development of a Wasatch ambassador program help our area, and could people model it after the Teton ambassador program, and maybe that would give more people, get more people out there doing what he's doing?
I'll just answer it really quickly. I started off as a volunteer. Now I'm getting paid for it. So, and the idea about an ambassador program here, I mean, Drew and I have talked about it quite a bit, and I've talked to some other folks in the crowd. I never expected to get paid, so it was bottom line for us. I think it would be a great idea down here, and you know, I'm not getting rich at it, but I'm happy to go up and do the work. So yeah, I would encourage you guys to think it through, because prior to me doing a job, they were going to close the access down, and I'm not going to try and blow too much sunshine, you know, my butt as far as what I do, but Brian is part of YDOT and things are getting better. But it's like, because of what I talked about before, if you talk to enough people and they talk to other people, like, you know, you think about Craig's program here, you know before you go, that's what, the human touch really helps. You know, when you're there and you can talk to a few people and they are willing to talk to a few other people, you get the message out. You know, maybe 5 bullet points or 10 bullet points or whatever, but you get the fundamental message out there, and yeah, the sign doesn't tend to do it. Anybody else want to say? There's your Wasatch ambassador right
there. A quick follow-up, and we got
I realized that I didn't even realize that you got paid to do that, because the whole ambassador term, I thought.
Yeah.
Ahead of some awesome volunteers. But talking about what Drew talks about, that if we don't do things to police ourselves, then it may be done for us. And maybe some really dedicated people who are really knowledgeable about the backcountry could be willing to step up and work with the Utah Avalanche Center and create that.
Yeah, I would almost let you guys speak to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just 10 years, it's exploding in the backcountry. The use and the numbers of people is exploding. Our population is expected to double in the next 25 years alone. I mean, it's unsustainable. And so, in terms of like having an ambassador, I mean, what Jay does is really phenomenal. It's really key. But my sense of it, my feeling, is that it can't happen without this full court press, where it's everything. It's every different type of outreach and education, where you have an ambassador. Hey, I'd love to have ambassadors for the Wasatch, but you all need to be ambassadors. It's the sea change in sort of this culture, where what's sort of accepted, you know, how we move elegantly through the mountains, and that's a key part of it. I think signs, I think PSAs, I think part of the Utah Avalanche Center, UDOT, Forest Service, like everybody's on board. Steve Scheid spoke to that as well, but it's really key for everyone to buy in and be aware of this, and to everyone to be an ambassador to that, to maintain what I would say would be these privileges that we have for backcountry skiing and riding in the Wasatch. And certainly, as I've spoken, it's not limited to the Wasatch, but certainly these ideas that are up in the Tetons where Jay is, and up in Idaho, and up in Washington State, and certainly north of the border as well.
Awesome. We got time for one quick question. Anybody else wants to follow up?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I usually like to not go negative on stuff, but I think this is one case where when you bring about the we don't get our act together, we're going to lose it, is effective. You can tell somebody they might get hit by a shell and they go, well, that's not me, that's some other guy. But if we don't get our act together, we all lose access to this resource. And like I said, I think it's an effective communication tool as we talk to other members of the community. And I hate to do that, but that's a threat that is real to all of us. You know, that's just my opinion on that when we're trying to communicate this to the community as a whole.
Yeah. Just, do you have more access here, say, now than you did 10 years ago or less? In your backcountry?
Personally, I think it's probably a double-edged sword. You know, gear is allowing us to gain more access. So I think that's probably the great equalizer.
Right. We have less than the Tetons.
Okay.
Yeah, we've gotten a few little things closed down.
Yeah.
So
the only closures.
That's a good point.
Yeah, Jay, the only closures here would be, of course, private land. You know, but our public lands, man, they're open to all of us. And that's what this panel is all about, is us policing ourselves. You know, I was just at the Colorado Snow and Avalanche Workshop in early October, and driving through the passes and driving through Breckenridge, I looked around like, holy crap, this place is ginormous. Oh my gosh, man, you could spend lifetimes skiing there or riding there. And I come back to the Little Wasatch, and it's like, wow, this place is bitchin', right? But the thing is, it's a little range. You know, it's just, it's a little microcosm that we have here. And I commend and I applaud this panel for giving to the community today, for offering some ideas, and I would also suggest, why don't we continue this work as a community so that we don't lose a great thing in our own backyard.
Okay, she's enthusiastic.
I have an enthusiastic question. Yes?
I have a question about when you talk about everyone being an ambassador. I think we would all buy into that and say, yes, we want to be excellent stewards of the Wasatch, but then I would invite you to help us put that into more concrete terms. If we are effective ambassadors for the Wasatch, what does that look like, and what would you hope for? What is that? Give us some guidelines to be a good ambassador.
Ski one at a time. There's mine.
Well, and maybe that goes to a broader answer that we as a community through these events could subcommittee and pick some people, and then, I mean, the resources are all here. Man, we're an embarrassment of riches here, right? We have got an amazing snow community. We have an amazing avalanche community, our partners in the Forest Service. So we want to make this happen. We want to be ambassadors. We'll make it so. And so why don't we do that? Why don't we subcommittee with people who are interested in doing that? And let's try to go in yet another cutting edge direction. And I would invite people who want to join. Let's make that so. In the meantime, though, let's give it up for this great panel.